right, welcome back. We took a quick little break. Today we're just talking about me on the show. Like I said earlier, I'm celebrating my 13 years of being retired. And my anniversary is the end of this month, so I thought, tell little stories about me, what everybody else comes up and talks about themselves. I figure give you a couple enlighten about me a little bit. So I was talking about our platoon sergeant. We had a formation, and he had this list, and he says, anybody want to go to sea duty? So I raised my hand. So he writes my name down. And he writes down a few other names. They had a quota, so, 10, 15 people. Then he goes to his other roster, and he says, all right, I got a roster here for anybody who wants to go overseas to the Philippines on barracks duty. So I raised my hand. He says, you already volunteered once. I says, yeah, but if I get turned down for one, I might get the other. I said, I got a 50-50 chance. So he says, all right, that works. So he writes it down. So we go to work, and around 1300, he comes walking by me, and he says, I got good news, I got bad news for you. I says, all right, what do you got? He says, well, the bad news is you're not going on sea duty. He says, the good news is you're going to the Philippines. I says, really? When? He goes, as soon as you pack your sea bag, you go to S1, you get your orders, you go on leave, and then you head on out in 30 days. So I did that. So I went to Company C Marine Barracks, the Philippines. And that was right after when I was in Camp Lejeune. I was in Camp Lejeune maybe a total of 3 to 4 months. And off to barracks duty we did. Barracks duty was almost the same realms of being an MP, except we didn't rate the armbands, but we got to carry 45s, we had arresting powers, and we just watched the Navy. It was a Navy base. It was a small base, the whole base itself was 3 miles. It was called San Miguel. I can't remember the name of the province. I have somebody at work trying to tell me the proper name of it, and he never got back to me. So we're out there doing that, and it was just like being a security officer. You stand the gate. We worked 10-hour shifts, 2 days, three days off. We had different posts. You had the pedestrian gate. We had a gate out by the antenna field to make sure the locals didn't dig it up and steal all the copper wire, which was very high demand back in the 70s. And we would walk patrols a lot. Part of our training was to, we walked the patrols. Our captain was this thing with just being a basic grunt again, walking the patrols in the rice paddies just in our training. But our still objective was to protect the base. So I was there for a few months, maybe 3, 4 months. And this one day, this other staff sergeant, not my staff sergeant, we had the barracks, it was an old Navy barracks. You had the first floor, then the second and the third. And they broke the floors down by Navy terminology. You had the port side, and then you had starboard side. Now, we lived on port side being left and starboard being right. So our section was off that day. So all of port side was off. So I'm just hanging around the rec room. Should have known better. Should have been out doing something, anything. But I was walking around the barracks, not doing anything, and the staff sergeant walks up and he says, I need you to get your uniform on and follow me. And I says, I understand, but, I said, our section's off today. He goes, right. And I'm shorthanded, and we have something going on at the beach gate, and I need you. So I ran upstairs, got dressed, came back down, jumped in the Jeep with him, and he takes me out to the gate. All the while he's driving me out there, he's letting me know that at this time, late last night, early this morning, we had some refugee boats come in from Vietnam. And they came in from off to the South China Sea, landed on the island, on the beach at the front by the Philippines where we were at. And it was about between 30 and 40 of them, men and women. Real, scraggly looking. You can tell that they've had hard times on the water. I don't know how long they've been out. They didn't speak any English. So they put me out in the gate there was another Marine already there, a Lance Corporal, and I was a Lance Corporal by then. I was an E3. And he was on starboard, I was on port, and they would call him my cousin because his last name was almost the same as mine. So when I said, who am I standing the gate with, they said, oh, you with your cuz. So I said, all right, that's all right. I get along with him. It's okay. So we got out there, and we're just to make sure that nobody can go on the beach anymore until these refugees are transported, put away, or whatever it is. We were E3s. We didn't ask questions. We just followed orders, did a lot of saluting. So there's this one point where we're just sitting there, we're standing there, and we're staring at them, and they're just staring at us like two exhibits. And they're clinging to the fence, and they're just staring at us on our uniforms. So my cousin over there, he says, he was from the backwoods of Florida, so he had this real thick drawl when he would talk. Like, I don't have an accent either, though. Y'all just listen with one. So he says, yeah, check this out here. So he reaches down, he pulls out we used to blouse our trousers at the ankles, and that's where he kept his Copenhagen. So he pulls out his can of Copenhagen. He goes through the little ritual, slapping the can around with his fingers, and he takes a dip and he puts it in. And then he's packing it in with his tongue, and he's looking at the guys, and he goes, you want some? And he holds the can to the fence. So one of the guys, they scrape the can with two fingers, and he starts scooping this Copenhagen in his mouth, and he starts swallowing it. So I'm just standing there in disbelief watching this going, that's all right. So this guy, he swallows it, and all of a sudden, his eyes just get as big as saucers, and he starts spitting up. And then he runs off to the beach. He runs down to the ocean. He's on his knees, and he's literally just splashing salt water in his face, in his mouth. And the others are watching us, and a couple, they're following, like, my God, what's wrong? And they're patting him on the back. And they're showing all this compassion. As they're patting him, he's coughing up, and he's hacking, and he's flushing his mouth out with salt water. And then my partner kind of takes a step closer to the gate, and he pulls down his bottom lip, and he exposes that the dip is right there. So then these guys that were still on the fence, they look over at the other guy, and they start yelling. They start running down there, and they're pointing where it was at. Now they're smacking him in the head, and I guess even in their language, you can hear him calling him an idiot. So I always found that to be a humorous story, because I'm in the middle of writing a book, and that's one of my stories I have in the book, and I always got a kick out of that one. But we used to get, from there we would get helo lifted to a place called Tarlac, that we would have to be TAD, that was considered a temporary assigned duty, or in our case, traveling around drunk. We would go to this place, and we would literally now have to walk patrols, because the fence line there was no more than just tanglefoot barbed wire that was about 2.5 feet, 3 feet high. And we got called in. Now, we were on the graveyard shift, so we would work midnight to 6 in the morning. So before our briefing, our sergeant calls us down and says, the NPA and the PCs are on the alert tonight. They're the PCs being Philippine constables. And the NPA back in the 70s was the New People's Armies, and they were trying to overthrow the way Marcos was running the government. So they were having it out that night, and we were told that we were on heightened alert, so we were to double up. So I get assigned with this other Marine, Lance Corporal Corbin. So because they put so many of us on the perimeter, we had to share everything. So instead of everybody having a flare, it was one flare between two of us, one radio between two of us. The only thing that wasn't short demand was weapons and ammo. So I requested an M14 instead of a shotgun that night because, well, I figured you got two shotguns out there, that's not going to be no good. If anything happens, you need a long-range rifle. So I requested a 14. Took a little bit of griping with the chief, who was the armor, but I finally got it. So we're walking down the perimeter. Now, this was the same trail as the Battalion Death March back in World War II. That was part of our patrol. And in various parts of as you're walking the path, you would see white marble crosses about anywhere between 4 and 5 feet tall. And it would say that these were the people that got killed here during World War II. So we're walking, and we come around this corner, we hear something, so we stop and we're looking at each other. And at this point, we have our weapons at sling arms, where you have the rifle on your back and you have the shoulder strap right here. We're not at the ready because we have no reason to. So we stop and we hear some murring, and we're looking back and forth, and all of a sudden, out of the darkness comes these 6 Filipinos carrying AK-47s, RPGs, and bandoliers all on them. And they got shower shoes and shorts and T-shirts. They just walked by us going, "Hi, Joe," and they just kept walking. And they're on the other side of the fence. So Corbin looks at me and he goes, "What do we do?" And I says, "I don't think we do anything." I says, "They didn't do nothing to us. They just kind of said, 'Hey, how you doing?' And they kept walking." I said, "We're standing here like we're waiting on a bus." I said, treat it like like a UFO. We've seen something, really not sure what we've seen. So we go back on our patrolling. About an hour or so later, we start hearing popping. So we walk up the ridge line. There's a little slight incline. As we get to the top, we're coming this way, and you can see them firing left to right. You can see the tracer rounds, and you can hear all the rounds cracking of the weapons. So we're just standing there like two goofballs on this little embankment going, wow, look at that, that's cool. Well, no sooner we say that, right about 4 feet in front of us, cracks of ground, and dirt spits up in the air. So then we just took either, I believe it was a ricochet. So we belly down on the ground. I get on my side, I pull out the magazine, I drop in the magazine, and I lock and load. I roll back, I look over at Corbin. He's on his back, and he's pumping all the shells into the shotgun he has, and then he chambers around. So now we're ready. So now we roll over on our stomachs. We're ready to go. So he says, hold on, we got to call this in. So he gets on the radio, and he calls to the sergeant of the guard. It was called Eagle's Nest. And he says, be advised, we're taking in rounds. Sergeant of the guard says, come on in. He says, why don't you come out and get us? The sergeant of the guard says, no, you come on in. So he gets off the radio, and Corbin looks at me and he says, well, I ain't getting up and walking. So I said, that's good. I'll low crawl too. So I cradle the rifle here, and I start low crawling back to the road. I look back, and I'm looking to see if Corbin's behind me. He says, will you stop it? Keep going. Don't stop. And he's got his shotgun cradle, and we start low crawling. We low crawled for quite some time. Anybody who has ever issued Satines knows how thick the material is, and we wore out the elbows and the knees on those. So we finally go out to we can see the sergeant of the guard parked on the side of the road by the street lights, and we finally realize that, okay, we're going to stand up. We finds out we locked and loaded, we're going to be in trouble. So we had to take out the magazines and put the rounds away, and then we cleared it, and we stood up right there, no more than about 20 feet from him. When he sees us, he kind of jumps. So we come walking out. First thing he says, did you lock and load? Let me see your weapons. So we're showing our weapons. He's looking at it, and then finally I say, we're fine too, by the way. He goes, watch, don't get smart with me. So I'm like, we call you and tell you we're taking rounds. You don't even come see us. And then as soon as you don't come get us, the first thing you have to say when you see us is, did you lock and load? I say, thanks a lot. So it was always a fun time. Got a few more stories, but we're running out of time. And like I say every week, I know that Nye County, we have over 5,000 veterans. And that's all I want to talk about is what I just talked about today. Just tell me some stories about it. I can get on another day and tell a few more stories, because the book I'm writing, I got quite a few stories of what I've seen and done my 20 years in. And if you want to be on the show, give me a call, 513-2056. Like I say every week, you have a story, I want to hear it, and I want to share it with everyone else. Just come sit back, have a cup of coffee, relax, and just tell me a story. Just like I did today. And I could easily have talked for an hour on some of the other things that have happened to me. When I went to New River, things at Camp Lejeune, things when I got stationed over in Okinawa, Japan, 3 tours. Believe it or not, a lot didn't happen when I was in Kuwait. Just ship offload there was about the dullest I've ever had to do when I was being sent anywhere, because we were really on a restricted post. We just kind of ran within the perimeters, and Libo was non-existent. So, as I said, you got a story, I want to hear it, and I want to share it with others. Give me a call, 513-2056. Until next week, take care of yourselves, and Semper Fi and hoorah.